An entire island turns red, not from sunsets or autumn leaves, but from millions of red crabs that march relentlessly towards the sea during their annual migration. Christmas Island is transformed into a blood-red spectacle. This annual natural event is one of nature's most spectacular displays, creating a sea of red that moves in perfect harmony. However, this natural paradise has faced grave danger for decades. A small gas has decimated the crab population, turning the island into a battleground. The solution adopted by scientists is to release millions of killer ants, tiny creatures almost invisible to the naked eye. What happened next sparked controversy. The world was astonished when it was proven that the smallest creatures determine the fate of an entire island. Christmas Island lies isolated in the Indian Ocean, 350 kilometers south of Java and 2,600 kilometers northwest of Perth, Australia. This Australian territory forms the peak of an underwater mountain that rises to a height of about 4,500 meters above the ocean floor. Only the top portion of this mountain, about 361 meters high, rises above the sea surface, creating an isolated tropical paradise covered with dense rainforest. The island has evolved over millions of years to become a world of its own, where living creatures have arisen that are found nowhere else on Earth. The red crab is the center of this ecosystem. These bright crimson crustaceans dominate the forest floor, digging burrows, feeding on fallen leaves, turning over the soil, and maintaining the balance of the entire place. They live a solitary life inside their underground burrows for most of the year. But with the arrival of the rainy season between October and November, something amazing happens. They all emerge at once. The males head first towards the coast, where they dig burrows. To mate in the sand, the females follow a few days later and choose the best males with optimal burrows. After mating, each female carries up to 100,000 eggs. During the last quarter of the moon, the females rush to the water's edge before dawn and release their eggs into the ocean in astonishing coordination. The eggs hatch immediately upon contact with the seawater. The larvae spend about 4 weeks in the ocean before returning as tiny crabs to begin their journey inland into the forest. Sir David Attenborough described this migration as one of the most memorable moments of his entire career. The Earth's surface literally turns red, roads are closed, and residents use leaf miners and brooms to help the crabs cross safely. This spectacle attracted tourists from all over the world. However, things changed drastically in the first half of the 20th century when the crazy yellow ants arrived. No one knows exactly when or how, but they most likely arrived hidden on supply ships. These ants originated in Southeast Asia, although their true origin remains a mystery. On Christmas Island, there was nothing to stop them. The ants spread like wildfire, forming super colonies covering hundreds of hectares, housing billions of working ants. As one enormous organism, the ant cities spread underground across the landscape. One colony alone covered about 784 hectares at one point. Scientists could estimate the numbers just by counting the ants on the surface. One study found more than 1,000 ants per square meter. Since the late 1990s, the invasive ants have wiped out tens of millions of crabs. Everyone has asked a simple question: is there any way to stop them? The crazy yellow ant gets its name from its erratic, jerky movements. Watch it for a minute, and you'll see how it rushes about quickly and randomly, as if in a constant state of frenzy. Don't let its small size fool you. These ants possess powerful weapons when threatened. They spray formic acid, one of the strongest acids in nature, targeting the eyes and leg joints of larger creatures, blinding them. Then the entire swarm rushes towards its prey. A red crab roaming the ant territory is met with certain death. With a density of up to 1,000 ants per square meter near supercolonies, escape becomes impossible. The ant attacks the crab's eyes first, causing it to lose its sight and disorientation. It then erodes the leg joints, paralyzing the crab. Finally, the swarm attacks the victim, tearing it to pieces. The ant doesn't just kill individuals, it acts as a toxic gas, suffocating everything around it. The burrow controlled by the ants becomes a nursery for its larvae. Nearby crabs usually die within 24 hours from the lingering fumes. The numbers have astonished scientists. Conservative estimates suggest that between 10 and 15 million red crabs perish due to ant attacks, which is approximately a third of the island's total crab population. has shifted its famous migration routes to areas of death instead of hundreds of crabs. Tourists found mangled carcasses scattered across the forest floor. Rangers tried to combat the threat using poison bait, starting in 2001. They used a substance containing fipronil mixed with protein granules that strongly attract ants. This neurotoxin attacks the nervous systems of invertebrates. Park workers manually spread the bait on foot among the massive supercolonies teeming with billions of ants. The bait was also dropped from helicopters 3 times to cover wider areas. This approach achieved temporary success as the ant population decreased in the treated areas, but it returned within a few years from untreated areas of the island. It required financial investment and sustained effort and provided only short-term relief. Scientists needed a permanent solution. The scale of the problem was enormous. Park rangers and ecologists wandered through areas that were once teeming with crabs, only to find death and silence reigning. The forest floor, which had once gleamed with vibrant crimson, had become a gray wasteland littered with leaves and lifeless carcasses. Entire sections of the rainforest were choked under the weight of untreated fallen leaves. Without the crabs, the forest grew unchecked. Seedlings formed dense, impenetrable thickets. Native birds struggled to find food, and small reptiles disappeared under attacks from swarms of honey-spraying ants. As they depend on tourism generated by the migration spectacle, the loss of crabs threatens their income and cultural pride. Scientists realized that traditional measures like poison bait and manual removal were only temporary. They needed a sustainable, long-term approach. The stakes couldn't be higher. The key to defeating the ants lay in understanding their food source. These supercolonies cannot survive without a constant supply of nutrients. Studies confirmed this link. When researchers cut off the ants' access to lac insects, ant activity on the ground dropped by 95% in just 4 weeks. Without the sugar source, the ants couldn't maintain their enormous colonies if their reproduction rates were reduced, and their supercolonies began to weaken. But lac insects cause their own problems. High densities put extreme stress on trees. These insects suck sap like vampires, weakening even large trees until their leaves fall. On Christmas Island, this stress, season after season, led to the complete death of trees. The falling honeydew encouraged on the branches grew mold, covering the leaves and preventing photosynthesis, leading to the death of more trees. Scientists realized a crucial point. You can't poison ants forever. The lac insects will always be there, ready to feed the next ant invasion. The cycle must be broken at its root. Controlling the lac insects means controlling the ants. This principle forms the basis of biological control. Every species in nature has natural enemies, predators, parasites, and diseases that limit its population. When organisms become invasive in new territories, they leave these natural enemies behind, so their numbers explode. The solution? Find the natural enemy and bring it to the site of the invasion, restoring the balance that nature intended. Researchers began searching for enemies of the yellow lac insect in Southeast Asia. Something must be limiting it in its native habitat while it spreads freely on Christmas Island. The search led to Malaysia. There, scientists found the answer: a small wasp species that specifically targets yellow lac insects. This wasp kept the lac population in Southeast Asia so low that it rarely appears in surveys. Its effectiveness was remarkable. Could this same wasp work on Christmas Island? Would it be safe to introduce another species? History has shown many disasters in biological control. Research had to be extremely precise because releasing millions of ant killers could have devastating consequences for an entire island if they misidentified the attacker. Scientists from La Trobe University in Melbourne led the research after years of field studies that began in 2009. They identified their target, a parasitic wasp called Tacardia fagus somervelli, native to Malaysia. Measuring only 2 millimeters in length and almost invisible to the naked eye, this wasp is a specialist killer. It lays its eggs inside adult female lac insects, and the larvae feed on their host from the inside out, killing it. When the new wasps emerge, they immediately seek out more lac insects. The cycle repeats endlessly. A single wasp can lay up to 8 eggs inside a single female lac during its lifetime. One wasp can parasitize more than 150 lac insects in Southeast Asia. This wasp works alongside other predators to keep the yellow lac population down in its native range. This wasp does not sting humans and does not build nests. It does not harm native wildlife, plants, or crops. In the native wildlife, many similar microwasp species already exist on Christmas Island, completely unnoticed by the inhabitants. This particular species focuses on yellow lac insects. Scientists needed to confirm this specificity, so they conducted field tests in Malaysia, exposing the wasp to 8 closely related lac insect species. By 2015, the Ministry of Agriculture had granted permission to import and release the microwasp on Christmas Island. Environmental authorities gave their approval, and everything met the criteria. In December 2016, a team traveled to Malaysia, collected 167 wasps, and carefully placed them in small bottles inside a secure bag. A Ministry of Agriculture employee accompanied the entire trip to the island. The wasps survived the journey with near-perfect survival rates. Now came the hardest part. These 167 wasps had to be bred into millions. Only then could a sufficient number be released to have a real impact on the massive supercolonies that dominate the island. Building an army. Christmas Island National Park rangers set up special breeding cages. Scientists from La Trobe University guided every step. They needed ideal conditions: suitable temperature, suitable humidity, and, most importantly, the team planted specific plants that the insects prefer. The lac wasps were introduced, and things went according to plan. They infested these plants with lac insects, creating ideal breeding environments. By 2017, the first wave was launched. Park rangers and scientists released 8,000 wasps across 4 sites of crazy ant colonies. Margaret Knoll and Circuit Tracks each had its own crazy yellow ant farms. The strategy was divided into 2 approaches. Half the wasps went directly to the front lines, released into the superactive colonies where the lac insects were most abundant. These wasps immediately began searching for lac insects. The other half entered wasp training camps to acclimate them to their new environment. Would they survive? Would they actually reduce the lac population? Would those reductions affect the ants? Monitoring stations were set up across the island. The release of wasps continued gradually over several months. Thousands of wasps spread across the affected areas. The goal was complete coverage of every major ant supercolony. Now came the waiting phase. Biological control doesn't work overnight. The wasps needed time to establish their populations, hunt the lac insects, and begin to reduce their numbers. Only then would the colonies feel the effects. The ants' influence. Months passed, then years, and scientists continued to monitor. Slowly, something astonishing began to happen across Christmas Island. The astonishing results unfolded over about 2 years after the release of the wasps. Monitoring teams tracked ant populations in different parts of the island. Data began to show encouraging patterns in some areas. Ant populations plummeted dramatically at one survey point, which had previously teemed with around 700 ants. Only 10 remained. Red crabs began digging mating nests in areas that had once housed enormous underground ant colonies. However, scientists remained cautious, needing consistent results across multiple locations before declaring success. A single positive result could be a coincidence, but similar patterns across several locations meant the wasps were indeed working. If they drastically reduced the lac population and deprived them of honeydew, the supercolonies could no longer maintain their enormous sizes. Colony growth slowed and reproduction rates declined. The ants didn't disappear suddenly, but their stranglehold on the island gradually loosened. The real proof came during the 2017 red crab migration season. Around 40 to 50 million crabs, the annual migration of crabs to the ocean had been relatively stable for years, reflecting the slow recovery brought about by poison bait programs. But by 2024, something astonishing happened. The number of migrating crabs had surged to 100 million, more than doubling. Scientists attributed this to multiple factors. Poison bait programs initially helped stabilize the population, but biological control using wasps dramatically accelerated the recovery. Areas where ant populations had declined due to wasps saw the strongest resurgence in crab numbers. Park rangers reported that the annual migration became more spectacular year after year. The crabs dug burrows in areas they hadn't reached for decades. The forest floor was once again teeming with red crabs processing fallen leaves as they did before the ant invasion. The ecosystem showed clear signs of recovery. These wasps deserve credit. These tiny creatures, almost invisible to the human eye, won a war against one of the world's worst invasive species. They saved an entire ecosystem without anyone noticing. However, the job isn't finished yet. Crazy yellow ants still inhabit areas. Large swabs of the island, remote areas not yet reached by the wasps, are teeming with supercolonies. Some locations require additional wasp releases, while others necessitate the continued use of poison bait to maintain pressure on the ants. Scientists have confirmed that Christmas Island will never be completely rid of the crazy yellow ants. The island's size and topography make complete eradication almost impossible, but control is possible. Keeping ant populations at manageable levels allows the ecosystem to flourish. The success raises another question. If the wasps saved the crabs of Christmas Island, what about the rest of the ecosystem? How far do the benefits extend? Red crabs are important not only for their stunning appearance during migration, but also for their role as environmental engineers. These crustaceans keep the entire island's rainforest healthy. Millions of crabs consume tons of fallen leaves each year, processing the leaves that would otherwise accumulate. This keeps the forest floor clean and maintains appropriate levels of moisture and temperature. Nutrients are returned to the soil via crab droppings, enriching new growth in plants. The crabs eat some of the succulents, reducing undergrowth and preventing the forest from becoming choked with vegetation. Light reaches the forest floor, and air flows freely, allowing the forest to breathe. When supercolonies wiped out the red crabs, the forests suffocated. Leaves piled up everywhere, and dense sapling growth led to impenetrable thickets. The forests looked green and thriving, but it was a deception. The forest was slowly dying, choked by its own overgrowth. Scientists noticed something alarming in areas dominated by ants. Plant diversity declined, and fewer species thrived. The beautiful, healthy forest that had evolved over hundreds of thousands of years became something unfamiliar. Other invasive species moved into the area, and giant African snails, another non-native pest, flourished. In dense thickets, without the control of crabs over the plants, these snails found an ideal habitat. Problems worsened as ant populations declined due to wasps, and crab populations recovered. The forests began to heal. Fallen leaves disappeared at normal rates again. Seedling density decreased to healthy levels. Plant diversity increased. Snail populations declined as their preferred habitat disappeared. Subscribe to the channel. For the channel, everything is declining. Ant populations have begun to recover. Home gardening on the island has improved. Yellow lac insects used to attack fruit trees and other crops, and with wasps controlling their numbers, gardeners reported healthier plants and a larger harvest, an unexpected side benefit of the biological control program. Christmas Island is beginning to return to its former state. The complex web of relationships between species is functioning properly again. Every creature has found its place once more. An ecosystem that took millions of years to evolve is being restored by tiny creatures invisible to the naked eye. The long battle will not see Christmas Island completely eradicate the crazy yellow ants. The topography makes this impossible. Dense rainforest covers the entire island. Steep slopes, deep valleys, and remote areas remain largely inaccessible. Ants hide in these places, safe from both the poisonous bait and the wasps. But complete eradication was never the goal. The migration season in 2024 was exceptional after the dry year of 2023. Crabs returned to their normal schedule in late November. 100 million crabs laid their eggs on the coast. Roads were closed and bridges and tunnels were protected for the benefit of the crabs. Dusters and brooms helped keep the paths clear. Tourism revenues soared. Immigration attracted visitors from all over the world. Hotels booked a year in advance. The landscape, once lauded by Sir David Attenborough, was restored to its former glory, and Federal Environment Minister Tanya Plobresky described it as a remarkable success story, demonstrating how collaboration can protect precious native species. Park rangers, scientists, and volunteers all contributed to this achievement. The lesson extends far beyond Christmas Island. Invasive species threaten ecosystems worldwide. Traditional methods like poisons offer only temporary solutions at best. However, biological control, when carefully researched and implemented, can provide long-term solutions. It's not perfect, it's not instant, but it works. Tiny wasps fight the insects that feed massive ant colonies. It sounds simple, yet the millions of red crabs swarming across the island prove this approach works. Would you support releasing millions of wasps in your area if it meant saving an ecosystem? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more amazing stories. Thank you for watching this video.